Hey there, BookTube. Noah. Everyone who reads and must converse is the channel. Today I'm going to do a little spiritual exploration through text. I'm reading through the Zohar. This is Jewish Kabbalah, put out in medieval times in Spain. And I am very unequipped to kind of talk about Kabbalah, Jewish Kabbalah specifically, in the depth that it requires to talk about the Zohar. I could pick a small verse or a small bit, maybe half of a page or something like this, maybe one page, and read it, expound on it, kind of explore it a bit, and hopefully allow it to flower into something that would be interesting to dig into. But I don't know who would be interested in it, and if it's something like that. Y'all just let me know in the comment box if it's something like that. This is an exploration prompted by my reading of the Zohar, but actually of a broader kind of spiritual exploration that is focusing on the universality of spiritual practice. So for this discussion, spirituality is a kind of innate quality of humanity, of being a human being, where we are, searching. There is a desire for wisdom, that's part of it, but a desire for virtue, a desire to be a more capable and more powerful, for lack of a better word, human being, to have blocks and frustrations and hurdles to our development as human beings removed, and to be able to, kind of do something about things that block our spiritual growth. And in those kind of things, if anybody's wondering what I'm talking about with that, I mean the constant distraction of look over here, look over there. The modern world is a master of distraction. This kind of thing. Spirituality is a lot more turned inward, and it's a quiet kind of practice, comparatively speaking, right? So these kind of things are drives. There's a drive in humanity as at large for what I term spiritual truth. Some people might have a problem with that terminology, but that's what we're using here. So juxtaposed with that is religion, right? Religion is not spirituality. Religion is an institution, a man-made. It is over history, and at its most fundamental, I say religions are positive. All right. And I say that, kind of like, right? Because a lot of bad and a lot of harm and suffering and hurt has been caused by religions, or in the name of religion. But what religion is fundamentally is just a vehicle for certain teachings to come down through time to us now and future generations too, that we wouldn't have otherwise. I'm trying to, and definitely broader than just a Western spirituality with that kind of viewpoint, right? Because the way that the West handles religion, it's always been about control, and it's always been about being the middleman between an individual human being and God, or their spiritual nature, their underlying spiritual nature. So Judaism, which is what the Zohar is, fundamentally a Jewish text. Judaism, most people, I would think, would say just off the bat, if Judaism is a universal religion or not, they would say no. because you have to be a Jew, right? You have to convert to Judaism. Somebody cannot really be accepted as a Jewish practitioner without going through conversion to the faith, right? And even then, somebody who, like me, not born a Jew, is not going to ever, be in the, welcomed in fully, because there is this kind of cultural barrier between, by the religion, by the Jewish religion, right? So, and I felt this and that kind of thing, of course, but the kind of spirituality that's illustrated in the Zohar is a universal spirituality, completely. It's not just for Jews; it's for humanity, all of humanity, and whether or not these people who are monks, who are teachers, who are rabbis, that are expounding the teachings and exploring this and going through it, they're the ones who are choosing to devote their lives to it, and are lucky enough to be at the time and place and in the families that they are, and all this kind of a lot of conditions had to be present in order for this kind of thing, for you to be part of this kind of exploration in that system, right? But it's not it's not exclusive. Don't be so small. I tell myself this all the time. Don't be so small-headed as to think that, God, an infinite God, would reveal himself to one group of people on one corner, one small little corner of the earth. And the spirituality shows itself through people, and it shows itself through them according to their own capacity. It comes out in very different ways depending on cultural things, and what a person's upbringing is, what their own temperament is, and what they're interested in, and all that as well. So I wanted to explore this in a way of showing Judaism and then talking about how it is, how we can see it as not universal, because and why. It's because there's kind of a gatekeeper, right? But a universal perspective in that religion, a deep spirituality without any middleman between God and the person, is termed mysticism a lot of times, especially by someone without a religious affiliation, right? So we find a lot of the most universal expounding of, say, Jewish religion or Christian, or if you pick a certain religion, the most universal expounding of that religion is going to be by a mystic from that religion. And it's not going to be, most of the time, and it's certainly not at first, it's not going to be embraced by that religion, by the structure, by the established structure of that religion. It's just how it is. So with Buddhism, there was the kind of thing where at the beginning you go, there's the fundamental text of Buddhism. The Hinayana path is this kind of monk renouncing the world, very practice oriented and based on individual experience. It's a mystical path. Buddhism is a universal spirituality, for sure, because there is no gatekeeping. There is no blocking of a person to, by their own choice, just embrace practicing and believing and going for it. So this kind of thing, it was universal from the start, but something happened about 500 years after Buddhism was kind of flowering in India and Nepal and the lower of Asia. And the texts that started coming out around the 1st century, somewhere around 500 years after Buddhism started to flower, is Mahayana Buddhism, signified by something like the White Lotus Sutra. Some other things are the Diamond Sutra, and other very well-known sutras that pretty much anything, if you know the name of a sutra, it's more than likely a Mahayana Sutra. And why? Because the Mahayana is more effectively universal than the Hinayana in a couple of ways. First, the Mahayana goes out to other cultures. It doesn't wait for individuals or interest to be shown into it before it speaks. The Mahayana gives freely all the time and goes out to all human beings, wherever they're at. In doing so, it learns to speak, and it learned to speak different languages. And I don't mean languages like English, Sanskrit, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese. It did all that too. But I mean, instead of in the language that the original scriptures were written, there is you can see it in different sutras that take root and that have flowered through different cultures, that the belief set itself learned to speak different languages of the imagination, languages of images and of poetry and of the feeling of being, instead of just a dry intellectual classification and trying to understand it all, trying to know it all. It's more like being one with the energy of it all, because that is the truth too. That is just as valid. And one of the teachings that drives this home in Mahayana is that the perfection of wisdom, knowing it all, like being an omniscient being, or going for wisdom and that kind of thing, is synonymous with devotion. Devotion itself, just devotion towards an ideal. And it doesn't, it matters not what that ideal is, as long as that ideal is towards virtue. So it is very interesting to think about this kind of thing. And in our Western spirituality, Christian, but piggybacking off of, a reformation of Judaism, right? And then now there's, Christian churches that give a very different message than the kind of thing that you would find even, 50 years ago, let alone, 1,500 years ago. Okay, right? What we have as far as universality in Christianity is a very universal spirituality as well. Even though because it is kind of devoid, lacks on, lacks on images and symbols. Images and symbols in the Bible, in the New Testament at least, are not the focal point, right? At all. There is certain books, of course, Revelation, and elements of John, that are definitely symbolically oriented and have depth to be probed in that kind of way. But the Bible itself, all of the Bible itself, is definitely an esoteric book, right? There's many levels of understanding in the Bible, and there is something that you can get out when you just read it. It's for you, and it's for your own inner being. So that's why we keep in mind that the true spiritual practice is always mystical. It's always individual, and it's always internal. Anything else is performance. And some of the things that drive this home, and Christianity, modern Christianity that is completely universal, has a tendency to kind of go towards new agey, these kind of things where it is universal concepts, but without a lot of substance, because you have people who embrace the ideas, and they want to show the universality of the perspective, but they do also want, with one hand, to keep their distance from established parts of the religion itself, the man-made part of this, because there's been so much negativity that has come out of it, right? So I'll show a few things that'll really get you going if you really are interested in seeing some of the more individualized and completely universal takes on Christianity and the Bible. One is Thomas Troward. This work, the creative process in the individual, is awesome. And this is completely biblical based talks and writings. There is a huge book. I don't know if I'll say huge. 400 pages, maybe. That is expounding on the Bible itself and talking about symbolism in the Old Testament. Because, see, when I was talking about symbolism in the Bible, the Old Testament is full and replete with symbolism. And it is the main, one of the main ways that you're going to work deeper into the text. The Torah and the ways that the Zohar here is playing with the Torah drives that home very, very strikingly. That there is no, there's no kind of set in stone historical reality that we have to, that you either respect or you're bad. You know what I mean? It's about questioning. It's about growing and growing yourself, the individual, through the questioning of things. One amazing book that'll blow your mind that came out through the Mormon movement here in the United States is Annalee Scaron, Ye Are Gods. This is an amazing work. I'm not going to go into it too much, but it is an individual's experience with Scripture and being a modern Christian. And see, I'm even hesitant to say this kind of thing because there's so much backlash to approaching Christianity like that. You say, oh, well, you can't just interpret it the way that you want. I'm not saying that kind of thing. But biblical interpretation or interpretation and commentary on sacred texts is nothing but a positive, period. And that's across the board, all spiritualities and all sacred texts. In the West, we have a huge reluctance to do that, to put out our individual understanding of a text or things like that, and then allow that to inform us and on our individual levels, on our innermost being, inform our actions and the way that we are in the world, and even in our conversations. I mean, we should be a little more open to this kind of thing. But the people that do it, like William Blake, all right, people that do this, that use the Bible as their textbook and actually expound on what the Bible is saying, they're labeled as heretics. They're labeled as people who are trying to lead people away or start a cult. These kind of things. It's common to hear that kind of thing, that kind of argument come concerning somebody who is engaging in biblical commentary or just their own their own understanding of of spirituality in light of a sacred text. The Bible here is what I'm talking about. But Blake was not afraid to do it, and so he died the pauper's death. You know what I mean? Even though his stuff is still, widely read, he's a giant for sure. Another is like Borges, someone who is free, and albeit Borges might have been kind of locked in or more involved in the mental intellectual side of thinking about reality and exploring reality and these kind of things, but it's all part of inner growth. As long as you're working on the inside and how your relation to the world and reality is, then that is spiritual practice for sure. You can be wrong, you could be right, you could have insights that augment your perspective, you could have a huge block that makes you want to, drop it and go a different direction. All of it is part of your spiritual growth. And embracing that kind of thing is part of what makes it universal. So I hope we got something out of this. When it comes down to it, this subject is just broad and it's awesome for me. I love this kind of subject. So if you enjoyed it, drop me a line. Let me know what you think, and let's have a little discussion. Let me know if you want to see videos on any more specifics or whatever. Thank you. Bye bye, BookTube.